Jimmy Rickle, WAGENET from Willits. We are here for Access News here in Ukiah. I run News Team 3 and we help out local access. We're going to talk about some of the ballot initiatives today. I've asked Al Howell to come in and talk about one particular measure, which is Measure 8F. It's a countywide regulate medical cannabis. 61 pages of stuff here that was hard to read, Al. We talked to the county clerk, and basically the people who submitted 2,502 signatures, which is 10% of those who voted in the last gubernatorial election, qualified the measure for the ballot. They checked all the signatures. Apparently they're all registered voters on some level. But today we wanted to talk to Hal to kind of give us an update on the group who is opposing this particular measure and why. What seems to be, in your mind, why this needs to be opposed? I have some opinions, but I'm going to let you come out first.
Well, Jimmy, and Mendocino County residents and voters, I'm a former county supervisor, and I've been following the marijuana issue for 20, 30 years. It's clear that we have a feature here in the county that is probably here to stay, and there has been a lot of effort towards regulating it one way or another, taxing it one way or another. The supervisors have had a bash at it, and the state of California has had a bash at it. The federal government has had a bash at it. All these bashes have resulted in, clearly, a lot of bashing. So the situation that we have here now, and I'm going to give just a little bit of background and then say why this group got pulled, is pulling itself together. The federal government still lists marijuana as a Schedule I drug, so it's illegal nationally.
They just reaffirmed that recently, did they not?
Just a couple of weeks ago. And so there's apparently not much motion towards legalizing it on a national level. That helps cement the black market in place. And therein lies the nut, because there is more money to be made with a black market product than a legitimate product. In California, starting with Proposition 215, which I think was almost 20 years ago now, yeah. The citizens of California decided that this was to be a medical issue and a health issue, not a criminal issue. But they didn't say how that was to happen. A few years later, SB 420 was passed, and that gave the counties the authority to actually begin to implement some strategies. In Mendocino County, the peak of that effort was what we called Section 9.31, and that had a series of features that seemed to be working okay and people understood it, but the federal government did not agree. And they came in a couple of years ago and said to the county, you must pull this from the books and don't do that because we don't like it, essentially. It doesn't fit the federal priorities. So at that point, again, we come back to the state, and the state begins to work on what would the environmental issues be, because that had never really been talked about. It had been the medical and the legal that it was talked about, but the environmental had not been talked about. And last fall in 2015, they did pass a measure which is due to come into effect in January 1 of 2018, leaving a gap of a couple of years. Well, our supervisors thought, gee, we should maybe do something about that, and they put together an ad hoc committee that is now, it made an effort. That effort didn't really get off the ground, and now they have in their general government committee a permanent ordinance is being crafted carefully to comply with CEQA and have public input and so on and so forth. And that'll probably take another 8 or 9 months to come into existence. It is with that backdrop that the growers have put together their own initiative, and they called it the Heritage Initiative, but the official designation is Measure F, Measure AF. And so as I read Measure AF, some 60 pages of thou shalts and thou shalt nots, I was somewhat alarmed, but when I got to the part where they amended every zone in the county to allow marijuana production, I became quite alarmed. And I went on the last day of their public hearings and I spoke to them about it. And then I went home feeling like I was the still small voice, and I was just the only person on the planet who didn't like this. But a few days later, I got a call from another knowledgeable member of the county here, and they wanted to know what I had said, and then it turned out after I had left, that person had spoken also. And as a result of that conversation, we realized that both of us had some very serious complaints about this, and we decided to put together something to oppose Measure AF. So here are the reasons, and I'm going to just kind of go through the reasons why we are opposed to it.
Okay.
And the first one is, it's written, well, I'll just tell you what our mission statement is, if there is such a thing. The No on Measure AF committee is dedicated to the proposition that this initiative, which is of the growers and by the growers and for the growers, shall not pass at the ballot box. We think that it violates the basic principles of representative government by simply having a special interest group in consultation with their own attorneys craft out an ordinance that works to the benefit of their interests without integrating it properly with our general plan. And many things come from that. There are 7 major problems that we have with the measure. And the first one is the Measure AF would allow growing in every one of our zones in the county. All the residential zones, the forest zones, the green belts, industrial zones, and so on and so forth. And the grows could be up to 1 acre of canopy. There is no definition in the ordinance as to what canopy is, whether you run a tape measure around the outside of the garden or whether you measure all the plants and add them up together. And if you get busy with your calculator, as I did, you might come up with anywhere between 2,000 and 3,500 plants in an acre worth of canopy. Well, that becomes significant. The second thing is it changes a lot of the setbacks that the county had carefully crafted out in 9.31. The Measure AF would allow growing within 30 feet of a neighbor's property and within 100 feet of a neighbor's house, except in mobile home parks where there are no setbacks whatsoever because it's a single ownership and people are simply renting places within that. And when you get down to the enforcement, those are the first 2 problems. The third problem is the enforcement now shifts from the sheriff enforcing marijuana permit rules to a civil procedure that is so weak and slow as to be non-existent.
Well, isn't the current one, if you file a complaint with the county, they go out and give an abatement notice, they got 90 days to abate the problem before they come in and do anything?
Well, those are for nuisances, Jimmy,
Oh, okay.
and I'm not sure if that kind of nuisance is the exact kind of nuisance that is called out in the current laws that are there.
Okay.
But this is going to provide what I'm just saying. There are 3 different departments: planning and building, public health, and the agricultural department are all going to have a dog in the fight of whether things are legitimate or not. That's because there are health issues, there are environmental issues, and there are farming issues which have been introduced by this ordinance, this measure, this proposal, which were not ever there before. And the penalties are very small for these things, the way they have written this. You have a $100 penalty if you are found in violation, and if you don't cure it within 60 days, it would be a $1,000 fine. Well, by the time you get through all the administrative parts of it, the grow would be done and gone, and the $1,100 would be a pittance.
Yes.
So you really have no incentive to comply. Then we come to the designation of marijuana production under the right to farm laws. Right to farm laws mean that if the scent or any of the activities drift across into your neighboring property, you may not complain about them. You're forbidden to complain. And the way that works is if you have a vineyard and you're fertilizing and the odors go next door to where you're living, that is not, the county will not respond to that kind of a nuisance complaint. Right to farm means that you have the right to do these various things. And marijuana gives off a pretty powerful odor at certain times of the year. So you find that we have growing permitted just about every place, and you have a very weak enforcement procedure. The setbacks are drastically reduced, and right to farm eliminates a number of the ways in which a neighbor might want to get their voice heard. When it comes to the setbacks, we have at the moment 1,000-foot setbacks between marijuana operations and youth-oriented facilities and churches and residential treatment centers, and those would be eliminated. There would be no setbacks between those community-oriented activities and a marijuana production. And Measure F reduces the separation between parks and schools to only 600 feet. So you have quite a bit of reduction. They also encourage, they will allow, under Measure AF, an unlimited number of marijuana dispensaries in any commercial zoning. You could have a row of dispensaries, Sam's Place, Joe's Place, Martha's Place, right in a row, and maybe that's what the county is becoming, but in any case, this is going to open the door for that to occur. And they also encourage the use of the value-added production and processing to create hash oils and concentrates and, I suppose, edibles. But anything besides the marijuana itself is encouraged to be processed on those spots. And when it comes to the manufacture of hash oil, they call out specifically as an approved principal permitted use, the use of butane in any manufacturing facility that's located in an industrial zone. That practice has already caused a lot of dangerous fires, and it's up for grabs as to whether that's a good idea or not. But this measure calls it out specifically, and you wouldn't even have to get a use permit.
Oh, really?
Because it would be a permitted use in an industrial zoning under this code. Well, we have already seen over the last 35, 40 years a number of fragmented, large holdings have been fragmented for the purpose of marijuana growing. We think that this is going to add fuel to that particular fire. And that many people who have properties, if they want to be legal, they will ideally, from their point of view, take whatever is out there and reduce it to 10-acre parcels, because each 10-acre parcel under this could grow up to 99 plants or 1 acre. So we think that there might be a lot of fragmentation that is a result of this. We have to say that that every time you have a permitted operation or an unpermitted operation, roads are being cut, growing pads are being scraped off, traffic is happening, dust is going into the air and into the watersheds, and the runoffs from the grows are taking either fertilizers or pesticides or both down into the watersheds. Not to mention that the fact that the water that they are using is coming from somewhere.
They're diverting it from either creeks or the old river itself, whatever.
Wherever it's coming from, whoever or whatever was using it before is not using it now because it's going to that purpose. We think that would increase astronomically, and it would really worsen the environmental problems.
I heard that that Potter Valley, some of the cattle grazing has had to shift because of water diversion of the creeks, long-term creeks and so forth.
I wouldn't be a bit surprised. I'm not a cattle rancher, so I don't really know about that. There's one other aspect to this, and we are not going to talk or take positions on anybody else's ordinances that they're bringing forwards, but I do want to note that the Board of Supervisors is working on a permanent ordinance that would establish reasonable permits for commercial marijuana with strong protections for the environment. And that's the way you're supposed to do it. That's the right way to do it, because through the CEQA process, public input is generated. The various planning and building departments, ag departments, public health, legal, youth, education, all of that is contemplated and addressed in the CEQA process. This completely goes around that. It's not even required in a citizen initiative to have a CEQA feature. But something like this is going to have a gigantic impact on our environment, and I don't mean just the physical environment, but our social and economic environment as well. So those are the reasons why the No on Measure AF committee was established. And from the enthusiasm that we're getting from people who are thoughtful about this issue, I think we have a good chance at the ballot box, and we're certainly going to try our darndest to keep this from becoming a matter of law in the county.
Well, one of the things that Access TV News wants to do is get folks like yourself and the other people on the committee know against Measure AF, to share their concerns. So as we go on, we will do an ongoing presentation of this. Looking at this myself today, these 61 pages or so, it listed 4 people, 5 people, one in Laytonville, Mendocino, Cobble, Fort Bragg, and Elk, that asked for permission to submit initiative to get signatures back in March 22nd. But 61 pages, it seems like they're writing all the laws and everything that the government should fathom out in terms of public discussions and so forth. So I can understand why this is going to be a large problem.
Well, the initiative is well crafted. It was written by a well-known marijuana defense lawyer who is in the Sonoma County area.
Okay.
He was hired to do it, and he did a good job of crafting out 10 chapters of thou shalts and thou shalt nots, and then 1 chapter that amends all the zoning codes. It's a scholarly work, and it is guaranteed to put you to sleep unless you have a real interest in reading government codes. That said, the overview that I have just given you is not present in this document. It is all about growing more plants, not being penalized, creating an enforcement mechanism that gives you no incentive to comply, and expanding greatly the footprint of marijuana in the county. Marijuana is probably here to stay, but this is not the way to go about creating a governance structure that will really function and has the blessing of our elected officials and the experts in the various fields that we depend on to make good decisions.
Well, I agree with that, and I'm sure as the public sees this, would you like to give you a phone number that they can give you feedback, or an address they could write to for further information, or do you want them just to contact the studio?
There is a website that is up, just up, and it is this: VoteNoMeasureAF.org.
Oh, okay.
VoteNoMeasureAF.org, and all the information is there. There will be a PayPal button and a credit card button on that website. It takes a few days to get that done, and it's not functional now.
Oh, okay.
We're moving as fast as we can, but it's not ready to accept donations that way. Donations can be sent in contributions and offers to assist to No on Measure AF Committee at 110, that's 110 South Main Street, Suite C as in Charlie, Willits, California, 95490.
All right, give me that website that's just come up again. That was Vote No.
The website is voteNoMeasureAF.org.
All right, we'll put that on the bottom.
There are capital letters in it, but they don't mean anything.
Yeah, they don't mean anything.
Just run it all together and you'll be able to see what's going on.
I did see an email address that I emailed to, hadn't got anything back, no on measureaf@yahoo.com.
That is correct. No on measureaf@yahoo.com is the correct email address for the committee.
Okay, so again, thank you for coming in and spending some time to fathom this out for us. I'm sure we'll be calling you back, asking you some more questions, but you succinctly put it together for us, and I appreciate that. And I'm sure the voter does too out here. Again, the measure on the ballot is called Measure AF, Countywide Regulate Medical Cannabis. The election is November 8th, the general election. And hopefully we can get you some additional interviews and comments. Access TV is out of Ukiah, California, channel 3. We'll provide this to other access entities around the county. Again, Jimmy Rickle, News Team 3. You can contact me at Post Office Box 24, Ukiah, or you can call my office at 485-7915. Again, Hal, hey, thank you for coming in and spending some time with us, breaking us into this monster initiative. All right. Hopefully you have a good day. If you have any questions, be sure to contact us. We're going to put this contact information up there for you.
Thank you, Jimmy.
All right.